welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today, I'm very excited for our guest. It was actually a very spontaneous thing. I saw a reel and he talks about his boxing background, and I'm a very simple man. I'm very complex, but I'm also very simple. And I went, I like boxing. What's his story? So today we have Kuba Cielen. Kuba is the owner of Ultra Flex Rotherham. He's a co-founder and online coach at Team MK, and he is a bodybuilding athlete. And I've been following his journey for a while. He's been pushing really, really hard. And I thought, you know what, I've got to get him on the pod. Kuba, brother, welcome to the Total Mental Performance Podcast.
I appreciate having me on, bud. I'm excited for this. So I've just spent the last 10 minutes shadowboxing, so I'm ready. Let's go.
I think that's something you never lose, is it? The shadowboxing randomly around the house.
I think it's like riding a bike. Once you've learned it, it's always going to be there.
Yeah, I don't know about you. Do you ever have that thing where you always think, maybe there is one more fight in me? I know I don't. I know I don't. But deep down, you always think, it's like, maybe there is one more scrap in there one day, but you kind of know. Do you have that, or have you let go of that?
No, when I can't bodybuild at a level that I want to now, I definitely will. 100%. There's in England, there's a lot of places we can box in some rough areas, so I can definitely take that route whenever I want to. So I definitely will revisit that stage of my life at one point, 100%.
I hear you. So for you, mate, when we look at what you do, you're clearly a high performance guy. You get a lot of shit done and you work very hard. Was it boxing where that all started for you, or was it somewhere else earlier than that?
From a very young age, I learned how to discipline myself. So it wasn't boxing directly, but boxing evolved that sort of discipline. So long story short, I've gone over this many times. I was 11 years old when I moved to England, and I couldn't speak a word of English. Starting at a school where I didn't know a single person. I didn't know anyone because we've just moved to England. Had no friends, it was just a family. So I was kind of thrown in the deep end. So doing that has forced me to get a lot of discipline on my day-to-day with the school, having to learn English and having to deal with a lot of things that adults have to deal with for my mum and dad. So I think throwing myself in that deep end really, really pushed me to develop that sort of discipline. And I remember my training actually started at this little fitness suite we had at school. And that was like literally as soon as I arrived, they had a fitness suite. We could go in. I was like, right, I'm going to train. And that way it all started. And pretty much a couple of months in, I actually signed up to a boxing gym called Model House Gym in Rotherham. They actually produced a few decent pro boxers, Atif, Shafiq. I actually boxed with Atif, for pretty much all his time when he was at Model House. Wow. Pretty much majority of his amateur career. Cash Ali as well. Cash was one of the boys in there as well. So, it definitely was a start point for me. And boxing was really the place where I truly developed more rigid discipline, where it's Groundhog Day every single day. I was getting up at the same time every day, going to school, straight after school. It was boxing 5-6 hours a week. And that pretty much looked the same every single day. So my days would look pretty much identical. And it was just getting stuff done on that daily basis from the age of 11. And every single week, it was pretty much the same drill. Get up, go to school, get my stuff done, obviously get my learning out of the way, get home, then 4:30, I'd be heading down to the boxing gym. And I won't be leaving the boxing gym until 8:30, 8 o'clock at night. Straight home, food, bed. And that would be literally it. That would be my life from like the age of 11 up until the age of 16, pretty much every single day. So the discipline was kind of engraved in me, and I found myself being very comfortable living in that sort of regimen. And this is where I personally thrived. It's like before, the only times in my life where I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin was when I lacked the discipline and I lacked that sort of structure. I feel like being exposed to it from a young early age and seeing the possibilities that it brings, that's where I truly thrive. And I think a lot of people, when you introduce them to that sort of discipline as well, it can go both ways. I think some people embrace it, some people love it, and some people thrive on it. And I think some people, you have to build them up to that. Unfortunately, I had no time to build up. For me, it was just straight all in. And luckily enough, it didn't throw me the other way. It was more so, right, this is what I'm going to do and this is where I'm going to thrive. And it's actually a funny one. I've actually got like a little cutout from a newspaper article. It was like big title, Malt House Boys take a punch, like pack a punch or something like that, something similar like that. And the trainer, Tommy Wilson at the time, he actually said to the guys, like, he practically lives at the gym like 6 days a week, doesn't miss a session. And that's what I've always been like from the start. And that was never really, it was never pushed on by anyone else. It was always my choice. I think that's the most important thing. I was never told to do it. It was my choice, and seeing how it made me feel and seeing the power that it gave me, that's what pushed me on to continue with that. And I think these are the habits that have allowed me to be the person that I'm today, and shaped me and molded me to be the person that I'm today as well.
I don't know if you've noticed, but you can always tell when you meet someone that's boxed. For some reason, when you speak to someone, you know they know. There's a level of discipline, there's a level of respect, there's a level of confident humbleness, confidence that I can look after myself and I can go and achieve things, but humbleness, which is this could be ripped away in a second.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
There's also a layer of integrity. I don't know if you noticed that. People that have boxed, often they have a level of integrity where they shake your hand, you do a deal, and they're generally legit. And I do think boxing is one of those sports where you can't hide. Do you know what I mean? Like if you've cheated, that's going to come out in the ring. Or if somebody's just better than you on a day, you just get found out, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You've just found your level on that day, and that's okay. And I do think there is a beautiful, loving brutality to boxing that really carves out powerful men and women.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a degree of respect, because another thing that I'll never forget is Mickey Wilson. Anyone from Rotherham watching this, you know who Mickey is. Again, you know, it was a big man. It was a fantastic boxer. He never made it pro, but it was unbelievable. Like his right hand was like a hand of God, literally. Anyone that's getting in touch with it, good night. And he always said, like, no matter what, there's always someone bigger, harder, and stronger than you around the corner. So no matter what, always remember that. Like, how hard you think you are, there's always someone harder than you. Accept that. So I think boxing teaches you a level of respect, and it's not even camaraderie. It's like an understanding that, yeah, you know what you know, but there's someone out there that probably knows more than you and probably is better than you. So you have to accept that as well. And I don't think much other disciplines can teach you that in the same fashion as boxing will.
100%. And you also got an instant feedback loop. Because what I've noticed in the gym, so I only actually started learning how to squat and deadlift a couple of years ago, right? There's not an instant feedback loop. So for example, with your squats, with your deadlifts, and if you're trying to build muscle, I was 56 kilos and 5'8". So I was a massive, in my head, I've got a giant complex where in my head, I'm really tall, but I'm actually not. It's just all my opponents were really short. But what I noticed in the gym is the feedback complex is a lot slower, right? Because you start squatting, you start deadlifting. Yeah, sure, that first 4 to 8 weeks you've been to the gym, you're like, oh my God, I'm a king. This is amazing. But generally the feedback's a lot slower. Whereas in boxing, the feedback loop is a punch in the face. It's like, it's instant, you weren't fast enough, kid. And you kind of have learned that humbleness of, yeah, there's always going to be someone bigger and better. And as soon as you think you know it all, you completely blown out of the way. I've just joined a club called, I say just joined, I've been there 6 months now, called Cuban Boxing Academy. And all these kids are all from Cuba. And they're like 18, 19, 20, 21 professionals, right? And I kid you not, they are unreal. And then the coaches as well, they're teaching me movement in a way in which in England, we're quite stand up straight, quite stand up tall. These guys they're dancing. They're like, I'd say the Cubans in boxing are like the Brazilians in football. They're just the way that they move, and they just completely broken me down. And you know, that's what boxing does. It takes your ego, smashes it into pieces, rebuilds it up, smashes it into pieces, rebuilds it up. And I think when we talk about success and being successful in a number of different things, a big part of it is a resistance to failure and being able to fail again and again and again, and understand that it's not a bad thing. You've just found your limit for that day, and then you keep moving forward, you know. But honestly, mate, if you're ever in Dubai, come over to the Cuban gym, and I'll I'll show you around. It's fucking cool.
I'm gonna have to. We're gonna have to. That sounds amazing. You've made a great point there with teaching how to fail and teaching humbleness. Now, first day when I actually signed up, and again, I'm not going to go too much detail. I'm not bore you with, but it's first day. That's going to be an excellent example of failure and teaching humbleness, right? The owner's daughter was in the ring. We both came to the gym, and the lad that I came in with, Jim, he lasted like a week. To be honest, I think it didn't even last a week. After that day, I don't think he actually made it back to the gym. So first day, never had a boxing glove on in my life. First day, he puts me in the ring with his daughter, who was boxing since like age of 3. And it was like, right, you can both come back if you last 3 rounds with her. I was like, it's a girl, no dramas. You know, I'm not even going to hit her. She put me on my ass like 6-7 times in the space of 3 rounds. Like last round, I was just basically just covered up, thinking that I'm just going to get smashed. Now, getting put on my ass that day definitely humbled me and definitely taught me a big valuable lesson. Like, you can't come in a place like that and think you're a top dog, because you're not. You're at bottom of the pile and you're starting from the bottom. And I think that's the kind of lesson that he wanted to teach us, and he wanted to really see what kind of people we are and how we can actually accept that kind of failure. Because a lot of people, whatever happens in their life, sometimes when they actually get to that point where failure is inevitable, it will happen, right? But it's how you actually respond to that failure. That's what defines you as a person, right? And that's exactly what the test was, right? He wanted to put me in the ring with a girl, humble me, and in a way, to most people it would be quite humiliating, but for me it was like, wow, if she can do that, imagine what I can do.
Yeah.
So again, your perception has to change. It's like, from failure, wonderful opportunities, wonderful things can happen, because that day, that honest day, it could have gone 2 ways, right? I could have accepted a humble pie and stayed like I did, or I could have left like the other lad, and my life probably wouldn't shape out the way it has done right now.
Yeah, and you just started externalizing. That guy's a prick. He set me up. It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. And he really gave you both a real solid acid test, a really, really solid acid test. And I do think you need that. I mean, the Cubans put me through that day one. They showed me literally, I kid you not, no respect. Eduardo Ramirez. Well, honestly, he showed me he didn't ask me, because normally in England I get a little bit of respect because most amateur gyms kind of know who I was. I'd walk in and be like, "You're Kyran, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am." Yeah. So they'd be like, "Oh, come on, straight away. I'm straight on the pads," or straight away, they're watching or whatever. These guys did not give a fuck. Eduardo literally took me in the gym, right? And I kid you not, he used to do what my old school coaches with the 80s and 90s used to do, with a big pad and smack me around the chop. Yeah. Boom. Right when I run out of steam and I can't throw any more punches, he smacked me around the chops. And I was like, shit. And I haven't been rocked in a lot. And it wasn't like a little slap. It was like, I was seeing stars. So guess what? I was angry. So I started pulling out more punches on the body bag. So I'm now flying, and then I'm fucked again. And then he goes, boom, does it again. And I kid you not, my feet were bleeding. Yes. My hands were shaking. These are just pads. Hands are shaking. I come home and I went, wow, all right, that's where I need to be, but the same sort of thing. You can sit there and go, well, hang on, they set me up. They're trying to take the piss out of me. It's like, well, no, they're just letting you know how it is. And I think in today's world, we've forgotten that there are winners and losers, and there is consequences. And yes, you can get a participation medal, but it's not about, everything's okay. It's about, what do you need to do that's required? Can you do what is required? And if you can't and you fail, you've got to take that as feedback to learn to do what is required. And I think boxing is just such a beautiful metaphor for that.
I agree.
So how did you get into the position you got in today? Because I'm looking at your profile, right? This is our first ever conversation. I'm thinking, right, here's a guy who trains ridiculously hard as an athlete. He's also built a gym. And from what I can see, it looks like a pretty successful gym. And he's also built an online coaching business and coaches some incredible athletes. So people are looking at that and be thinking, well, I can't possibly do that. But maybe they just don't have the context of, well, how have you gotten there? So how did you actually transition into coaching, then into the gym, and then into all of the things that you do? What does that journey look like?
Cool. So the journey started at 16. I kind of fell out of boxing when I was at the bridging gap with like 15, turning 16. And the reason was pretty simple. Like, you know what judging's like in amateurs, right? It's pretty terrible. So that's what kind of pushed me. Yeah, that's what kind of pushed me out of love with it. And I always loved training, but it's like when it came to the actual bouts, it's like, yeah, I'm in. I'm happy to accept I've lost if I've actually lost, but I'm not happy to accept if I haven't lost. And I know I haven't lost. So that kind of pushed me out. And whilst I boxed, I always trained, right? Weights was always done every single day. So I'd literally get in the gym. Boxing would start at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, finished at 7:30, 7:30 to like 8, 8:30 were generally weights. And very slowly, you know, that kind of transitioned over where I started doing a lot more weights, a lot more bodybuilding training, start training, especially when I first joined the actual first bodybuilding gym. At the time, there was in the city, there was literally 2 gyms. There was like a fitness first. There was 3 gyms, actually. There was fitness first, the boxing gym, and the bodybuilding gym. And at the time, as you can imagine, that was what now, 12 years ago when I joined the first bodybuilding gym. It wasn't as popular as it is right now. So it was more of a niche sport. Bodybuilding really was. And at the age of 16, after like 6 months in the gym, I did my first bodybuilding show. And ever since that day, it was more so the grind that I had to go through for that comp was harder than anything I've ever done before. And to a degree, the training isn't harder than boxing, but the grind that you have to put yourself through to get in stage condition is harder. So that kind of made me fall in love with bodybuilding a lot. And the history went on from there. It's like I did my first show at 16. I did continue competing. I prepped my first client when I was like 17. That was actually one of my best friends. He competed, won the show. And I did a lot of junior shows under 18s. And I pretty much did them all, won every single show that I could that was under that age bracket. And then when I turned 18, I pretty much started PTing from the get-go. And at the time, I was actually working on the doors at the same time at a security in Sheffield and Rotherham. So from that age, I was already pushing and building up my business, PTing in the day, obviously doing the doors at night. And very, very slowly, it really started to build up because the better I got as an athlete, the better I got as a coach, the more discipline I got, the better I got my schedule, the better I got my knowledge, the more I invested myself into getting into the process so much where I am becoming better. My knowledge base is getting better and I can deliver results better. And organically, it really started to go from there. And all I literally had to do is post my clients' results, post my own results, and the business started to really, really get higher and higher. So I got to a point where at the age of 21, I won the Junior Universe. And that was the year where I was able to actually leave my door work, leave the security, and be able to actually coach full time. Because I was in a position where my online client base already was high enough and my PT base was high enough for me able to actually go all in on that. And funnily enough, when I went all into my coaching, when I left actual security work, I was actually able to do a lot more and take more clients on, work with more higher profile athletes as well. Already at the time, you know, had a lot of juniors competing and winning a lot of shows. So as you can imagine, you know, it all went on from there. And from a very young age, I was always disciplined with what I do and how I do it. I never did any holidays with the lads. I didn't do any lads holidays, not a single one. And you can ask any of my friends that know me. I never bought any flashy cars. I never spent my money. I always saved my money. And I lived a very comfortable life, but I lived like I was poor because I was poor. When I came to England, you know, my parents were poor. Like they had to work, you know, all these hours. They were getting paid very, very little. You know, the outgoings were already high. And nothing's really changed from that. And at the age of 21, at the time when I was obviously in transition of leaving the security and being able to coach full time, I got approached an opportunity in that year where I took a year off from competing. That was 2000 and let me get my years right. That was 2000 and what was Junior Universe? 2015, I believe. 2015, that's when I won the Junior Universe. That was when I was 21 as well. I got approached an opportunity to open a gym in 2017. So that was the year 2016, following on from that, right? And it was definitely an opportunity that I could not refuse or turn down, right? It was with people I already knew. They had the warehouse that they had their eyes on, which is the gym right now. And they said, look, we want to open a gym, we want to get it going. And that's pretty much how it happened. It went on from there. So it was a lot of years of putting the work in, a lot of years of saving up, a lot of years of basically saying no to a lot of things that people my age were saying yes to, wasting the money and wasting opportunities as well. And I've always been very patient. Like from a very young age, I always said, I will have my own gym and I will want to be a gym owner. I will always want to, that's something I always wanted to do. And funny enough, I got ridiculed for it when I was very young at that first bodybuilding gym. But that opportunity came about all them years later. And I definitely went all in with it. So 2017, January 9th, that is when the gym opened. Obviously, I was 22 at the time. Coaching was, going really well. And my PT was going really well. And when the gym actually opened, my PT and coaching, again, leveled up again. So it kind of snowballed on from there. And the biggest real thing that I always focus on is being the best possible version of myself and trying to do my best, both with providing the value for people I work with and still making sure that I lead from the front as an athlete, because that's what I love. It's like my own process, my own bodybuilding. That's what fuels my happiness. That's what fuels my productivity. And I think that's what a lot of people often get lost within their own process. They try to prioritize business. They try to prioritize all these things. But it's like, when I look back, the reason why I am where I am today is not actually prioritizing business. Like business and being successful at business is literally a byproduct of my own hard work and discipline that I'm devoting towards all areas of my life. And I think that's where the missing link is right now. It's like, if you can really commit to your goals as a person and you can show that in itself is a selling point. If you cannot commit to your goals and you cannot show people what you're capable of as a person, as an athlete, whatever you are doing, let me tell you, anyone that is looking at whatever service you provide, they are not going to be willing to invest in you because you're not willing to do what you're asking them to do. I think that's kind of the biggest driving factor. And, I could literally give you like a proper long time story on how it all happened, but that's like a little bit of an overview. So obviously I've given you a bit of an overview. So I'll let you kind of decipher that. And we can kind of follow it on from there, and we can dig into whatever you want to dig into from there. Otherwise, we're sitting here for 2 hours and I'll tell you my life story.
Yeah. Well, look, there's some beautiful flashpoints in there. Obviously, going out and just doing it is one thing that I really respect, and I have the same value, is just like there's a relentless focus on results is what I can see. You didn't say that, but that's what I can pick up on: personal results, client results. And I do think any walk of life or any walk of business, I think people do over-rotate on the money a little bit. They don't follow their nose. They don't follow the things that they're truly passionate in. And if you're truly passionate, and you said bodybuilding is where your happiness is, right? So if you're truly fulfilled by the inherent tasks at hand, it will never feel like work. For me, when I was boxing, I used to box till my feet would bleed because I wasn't a natural boxer. I learned how to counter punch. I learned how to keep things long. I learned the England style, up on your toes and very technical. But actually, I was a scrapper. I'd throw up. For every punch you threw, I'd throw 3 or 4 punches on top. That was my natural style, but it didn't feel like work because I loved it. So I was like, right, my first ever England coach, I actually did a post on him today to keep an eye out for it. I said to him, that's what I want to do. He's like, okay, well, you're gonna have to learn how to box on your toes. You're gonna have to put in an extra 2, 3, 4 hours a week. I went, no problem. Turned up every single day learning how to move on my toes. He then turned around and said, you'll be a great coach one day, which no athlete ever wants to hear, because the athlete hears that as you're not going to make it. And he was right. I'm a better coach than I am, and I was a fighter in terms of ability. But if you find what you're passionate about, what you inherently love, and you get really good at that, and then you generate results at that. And I do believe in talent. I do believe there is a small element of talent. You do need that. It's not, I do believe in Carol. I don't know if you've read Carol Dweck's mindset, growth mindsets and fixed mindsets. I believe that to a degree, but I do believe at an international level, when we're talking like world level championship boxers or in any field, I do believe there has to be some innate talent there. There is a balance, but that's not to make excuses to not work hard and not maximize your potential. But what I can sense is a guy that's just really rotated on getting shit done and getting results. And I do find that if you over rotate on the results and the delivery, then the money comes to you. Whereas when you're opposite, you go, well, what's the magic marketing scheme, or what's the magic this, or what's the magic that? It's not sustainable. Whereas if you can have a conveyor belt of results, somebody comes in this part of the conveyor result, out comes the other side. You know, for us at CMP, 70% of all of our business still comes from referrals. That's down from 80-90%, because I've now got a marketing manager trying to take a lot of the load off of me. But I do think there is an element of, you've just got to fucking love what you do. And it might take you some time to figure that out. Some people find it early and they're lucky. Some people don't. You do need to find that, and then you just need to go all in on those results.
You can't really fake it till you make it. I don't think you can fake it. Like, I've always been passionate about what I do, right? Training's always been a passion. It's like training even more so than bodybuilding. That's always been a huge passion of mine. And coaching and PTing grew into a passion. It was literally like, I never even thought to myself, like, this is what I want to do full time. It's like something I did because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going through the process myself and the people that I'm helping as well. It was never like, I want a PT because it's good money. Because like back in the day when I started, it wasn't really good money. It really wasn't. Like, I could have done something else that would have brought me more finances. It wasn't really that at all. It's like, I remember when I first started, I was charging like £15 an hour to PT for the full hour. You know, it's ridiculous really when you think about it. Now, I never once in my life focused on any financial goals ever, or I never focused on like earning a set sum of money ever in my life. It's like, if you're truly good at something, that will come. I'm a massive believer of that. It really will. And it's like, you have to put the hours in, you have to put your mileage in to be able to get to that point. But it's, are you prepared to be relentless for the next 3 to 5, 6, 7 years to get to that place? And if you are, you're not even going to think about that, because you're going to be like, well, it's what I love. I enjoy doing this anyway. So who cares? I'll do it for the next 20 years. It doesn't really matter. So that's more so my perspective on it. It's like, it's just what I do. I love the process, and I love the entirety of it as well. And that's the way it goes. That's the way cookie crumbles. You know, it's not like I'm doing this for any other reason, because I could probably do other things. So, you know, I think that's the mentality I have right now, and I've always had from day one.
Yeah. And for those that listen to this and perhaps haven't had that mentality from day one, they're still trying to figure that out. Questions I always ask those individuals are, okay, if no one else could know about what the journey is that you're about to pursue on, would you still do it? So for example, let's say you want to launch a business. Okay, that specific business that you're launching, if that become a massive success, if no one else could know about it, would you still be interested in it? Same with same actually when clients come to me like, oh, I want to buy a house or watch a car or this or whatever. I say, well, look, if no one else could know about it, would you still have it? And if the answer is no, you're doing it for other people. So that's one. And the next question is, well, if money didn't exist, would you still do what you do? I still sit here pinching myself, mate. I kid you not. I sometimes sit, I do a lot of journaling, and sometimes I'll sit there and I'll write in my journal, how the fuck do I get to do this every single day? How the fuck do I get to have these conversations with these extremely talented and hardworking individuals that have similar values to me? How have I winged that? And I haven't winged it. I've taken a lot of fucking risk and I've worked my bollocks off to get here. But at the same time, it's surreal. So I think if money didn't exist, would you still do what you do? And if no one else could know about what you do, would you still do what you do? Or let's say this podcast didn't go out. I just loved having this conversation. And I'll do it again and again and again and again and again. And I think when you get to that place of what you find interesting, what you enjoy, and what you can get good at and you can get paid for, I do believe that's almost like the little secret of life.
I mean, that's an amazing question, because it's a funny one. It's like, my favorite people, really, the most successful people I know, you wouldn't know how much money they actually have. You wouldn't know what they actually have at all. And it's a funny one you mentioned that, because the amount of people I see post flashy things on Instagram. It's like, that's cool, you know, that's all good. But it's like, what is driving you? Because if that's driving you, it's like that carrot that's dangling there, it's always going to just dangle there. It's like, you're not, for me, that carrot always dangles there, but I enjoy that process. I enjoy that chase of the carrot. But if that carrot is just the finances, it's like, are you ever going to be happy doing what you're doing? Because what you're probably doing right now is not really driven by your passion. It's probably just driven by the financial gain out of it as well. And for me, is that the life you want to live? Like, don't get me wrong, the finances can help to a degree to give you a better life in a way, but is it a happy life?
I see finances, it will take away a lot of stress and worry, but then there becomes a point where an extra 5, 10, 20 grand of extra month doesn't really move the needle in terms of happiness and fulfillment for me. After I boxed, because if you think about men, I was very ambitious and confident, but I was also very insecure as a kid. And I do think boxing helps with that, but it also perpetuates that, because I place my value on having a six pack and my value on winning fights. So as a council house kid, I didn't know anything else about business, but I knew it was something I was interested in. So I went into software sales into the city. And after my boxing career, because I was training full time, training up running in the morning, and then usually pad session in the afternoon, or a little bit of sparring late afternoon. And then in the evening was either strength and conditioning, a little jog, more recovery, stretching stuff. I was doing that for about 2 years. And when I went into the city, it was basically off the back of a broken identity I've failed, air quotes, in boxing because I wanted to go to the Olympics. That didn't happen. Shit. Okay. I had an eating disorder. I ended up not leaving my parents' house for 2 weeks and tried taking my own life because the whole identity just collapsed. And then I went into sales and I had a 15 grand debt from a failed nutrition app. Get this, right? I built, you might remember this, you might not. I built an app called Make Weight. And Make Weight was a nutrition app for boxers to help boxers lose weight for their fights. And you put in your height, your weight, your body shape, how often you were training. We attributed scores to, like, if you did 3 rounds of sparring, you probably burnt this many calories. If you did 6 rounds, it was probably this. And we built that. And as you know, the boxing market's about 4,000 people around the world with actual athletes fighting. So it was so small, put us in debt.
A lot of the guys are gypsies as well. So, you know, you're not going to get any money out of these guys.
No, that's it. So I learned very quickly when my boxing career fell apart and that business fell apart, like, fucking life can really cripple you if you're not careful. So I went into the city to try and really turn that around. And it was great because I was skint and I was insecure. Right. So for me, software sales was amazing because it helps me validate myself. It helps me. I mean, at one point I was living on a 1-bedroom council flat on an estate in South London with my auntie, sleeping on the sofa because I didn't have anywhere to live because I was trying to pay off this debt. And I'd get in the office for 8 a.m. I'd call into and sell into Europe 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. and then 4 p.m. till 8 p.m. I would stay there because you could sell into the US because the US was 4 hours behind. So I could double my commission. And then after that, I don't know, you probably know this gym, Dale Youth. Dale Youth was about a 40-minute tube journey. And that's obviously where James Segel, George Groves and Daniel Dubois all came from. So I used to train with Mick Delaney. So then I'm now doing that during the day. And then I was boxing at night. And I did that to really clear off debt. The problem was I did a lot of mindset work. I've probably done about 150 hours to 200 hours of one-to-one therapy, mindset coaching, mental performance coaching on my own mind. I started to realize, well, hang on, I'm not insecure anymore. I'm not skint anymore. So I lost all my meaning and purpose and it all completely fell apart. So that point of finding stuff that you're genuinely fascinated in, that you love, and that's what I do now. And sure, I could probably be making a hell of a lot more money selling software in what I do. Or at one stage, I was coaching a lot of CEOs, managing directors, investors, high net worths. I still have a handful of those clients, but the values just aren't there. So with TMP, we coach coaches. What do coaches want to do? They want to help more people. They want to build better lives. They want to actually change the world for positive good. So for me, this doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. Don't get me wrong. There's stress, and there's a difference between stress and eustress, which is a good stress. But it's finding the things that you absolutely inherently love. And when you do that, it don't feel like work. But when you chase the finances, the decisions that you make will shape how you spend your day and how you spend your time. And if you're spending each day and each time doing things that there's a difference between hating something for the love of what you need to do, doing things that you hate because you love what you do, if that makes sense, and then doing things that you hate, but actually you hate the outcome, if that makes sense. So I do think that over rotating on the shit that you fucking love, everything will pay off in the end.
I agree 100%. But at the same time, I think sometimes it's like with coaching, you know, I don't doubt a lot of guys love coaching, right? But I think at times a lot of people can bite off a lot more than they can chew. And I think when you bite off a lot more than you can chew, that is when you can go for an experience where it's not a pleasant experience. And I think that's where I think things can almost start to hold you back from making further progress, both personally and in business as well. So it's a bit of a yin and yang that you have to get the balance right, where, you know, you're doing what you're doing at 100%, you're giving all your effort, but not to the point where you're stretching yourself so much where you just not being able to keep up. I think that's a big one as well, especially with ever growing, you know, coaching industry. You know, I think most coaches could probably work with a lot more people than they could actually handle. And is that a good idea? Probably is not. You know, you can only help so many people before you kind of slip your foot off the gas with whatever you're doing yourself as well. For me, that's definitely the balance that I had to find. Is like, in past, I've definitely stretched myself a little bit too thin. And I think finding that balance where, right, this is what I can do and still absolutely fucking love it without it feeling like a job. And this is the balance that I need to get right. And this is why I need to keep myself accountable, because realistically, there's no need for me to be doing more. And realistically, it's like, sometimes it's very easy to get over ambitious with yourself.
Yeah, one of my mentors used to be one of the top guys at BA, and he said to me, the way that they build airplane factories is they build them to operate at 80% year round. And I said, why do they do that? Why don't they maximize the extra 20%? He goes, because that's when stuff starts breaking. That's when machinery starts breaking, personnel start getting burnt out and tired. And guess what? If you're operating at 100% and a client comes in with an urgent order, and you know what, you're going to operate at 105% and really fuck the place up. So no, you operate at 80% capacity, because that means you can have consistency. And if there is whatever happens, people get sick or you get an extra order and you need to go to 90 to 95, at least you can stay consistent. And that's the rule that we have here at TMP with all of our coaches. I make sure that they're always operating at 80% capacity. And if they're operating at 100% capacity 2 months in a row, we've overlooked that and say, right, you're not getting more clients now. We're holding that off, and you've now got an 8-week waiting list for you to do that. Because otherwise, you can burn out of what you do. For me, I spent so long dieting, cutting weight. I think that's what led to a binge eating disorder, and that's what led to that, because I was trying to stay 56 kilos at 5'8" year round. It's not sustainable. So eventually you go, fuck this, and your body and your mind will tell you no. So I totally agree with you. It's consistency over the long run versus, you know, driving at 110% all the time. And you can see the guys who are driving the car at 110%, and you can always see it and you can always feel it, and you can sense the car's going to crash.
Yeah, it's the stress level is not a good stress level. It's not a good energy as well. I think people can sense that as well. It's like, don't get me wrong, it's meant to be hard. That 80% is probably, most people think they're going at 100%, but realistically they're probably going at 80%. I think that's a perception. I think that's another perception that people undervalue as well. But you can definitely sense the energy. It's like the overwhelm energy, where it's not a good overwhelm. It's more so an overwhelm where it's like the world's about to explode and people on an edge, and it's like, it's not a good place to be mentally and physically at all. You know, you want to be a place where you stay productive and sharp as well.
Yeah, and that's where they're out of control. But if anyone's listening to this and they are in that space, they're thinking, fuck, that's me. There's some things that you can do. One is working on the emotions that have led you to that point, whether that's insecurity, fear, doubt, whatever's pushed you into that point. Doing deeper work on the emotions to let go of that is a big part. And another part as well is learning that, okay, you've just learned what your current capacity is, and that's okay. And sometimes we have to reach our capacity, and that's always changing. Our production capacity is always shifting. It's getting bigger and smaller and bigger and smaller. Sometimes you need to experience that to go, all right, I need to back off a little bit. I've found my limits. Here's my new set point, and I operate at my new set point, and then you push again. And I think that's a very underrated skill in all walks of life. But there'll be a lot of people listening to this, and there'll be a lot of people looking at you, and they'll be going, yeah, but like, he must not struggle with anything anymore. Like, he's just got this nailed. Like surely, you know, this is easy for him because he's done it all. Like Kuba's been through so much. This just must bounce off him. But there'll be stuff that you struggle with today. What would you say the biggest things that you wrestle with on a mental and emotional perspective would be?
Sometimes I definitely care too much for my own good. So with coaching, it's actually, you know what, it's actually quite interesting because it's a conversation I had with a client this morning. He's had a bit of a rough week, you know, for a number of reasons, and I'll actually speak about it now, more so in relation towards my experiences. It's like with coaching, you invest yourself a lot into people. You invest a lot of time and effort into people, right? And for me, I struggle to emotionally detach myself from that, where with coaching industry, you have to accept that, unfortunately, people are always going to shift their ideologies and ideas, and some people don't have the same morals as you. And it's okay to accept that clients want to try different things at times as well. And for me, I struggle because I emotionally attach myself to the process with myself and with clients. So for me, that's always been a struggle. It's having that emotional attachment to the process, where sometimes I feel like I care too much in a way, because I don't treat coaching as a business. I never have done, and I will never call it a business. I just don't. Like I've never really called it a business, and I will always refuse to say that. It's like people say, you know, I'm a CEO of this, I'm a CEO of that. It's like, yeah, I've got a gym, that's my business, but coaching isn't my business because it is my passion, right? And this is where I definitely struggle a lot with. It's like I'm not. In a way, I can be ruthless at times. It's like if my client is not giving me the effort, I will happily tell them, look, you know, I'm not the right coach for you. It's the same with people apply for coaching and I know they're not the right fit. And it's actually a conversation I had with a lad yesterday from my gym. And I was like, look, you're not at a place yet where I think my coaching will be suitable for you. And I refuse to take money from you for that reason. You know, I'm not going to take someone on when I know it's just not going to be the right service for them at that given time. Whereas if you're prepared to be all in and come back to me in future when you want to be all in with bodybuilding, I'm happy to take you on then. Absolutely. But it's a hard one. I definitely struggle with that. It's definitely an emotional attachment because I'm definitely, in some ways, I'm emotional. I'm definitely an emotional person in some ways, especially when it comes to caring. And I think that can be a downfall at times. But at the same time, I do think it's strength. Also a strength at the same time as well. Yeah. But in certain situations, I think it can be a downfall. Like I tried to explain to my client this morning, it's like invest your time and effort into people that reciprocate it. If people are not willing to reciprocate that and they're making it obvious, like he has found out, you know, let it be, you know, and have that conversation with them if you need to, but don't try and emotionally invest yourself into people that do not reciprocate that, because there's no need for that. You don't need to do that. You know, you only have so much energy you can give out. So for me, that's definitely a big one. Now, secondly, I thrive off pressure, 100%, but sometimes that pressure can become quite negative as well, when it's not even expectations that people set for me, it's expectations set for myself. And again, I think that can be a good thing and a bad thing, because it pushes me to be better. But at the same time, I sometimes can feel like, am I trying to do too much? Am I trying to, you know, push too hard? So it's almost like a question mark. Can I still do it with the quality that I pride myself in? It's like, yes, you fucking can. 9 times out of 10, that's always the answer. But again, I'm not perfect. I've definitely made a lot of mistakes, but I've definitely learned from them in the past. And I think that's another one. It's, you know, sometimes your ego can get in the way, because anyone that's does what we do, that's done what we do, we can all develop an ego, right? And sometimes
on your own to fly.
100%. And sometimes you have to get your ego back in check. So there's a lot of things that I could reel out that I struggle with, that many people probably listen to this probably don't acknowledge themselves and don't realize that they are probably struggling with the same things themselves, because they can't actually see that. Whereas I've definitely been able to see that. It's like with bodybuilding as well, taking the extremes that we do it at as well. You go for stages like you mentioned where it's fluid. Your work capacity is fluid, and you can handle more at certain times. You can handle less at certain times, and that's definitely applicable for myself. But the way I try to operate, it's always at that higher level, and that can be a struggle at times as well. So definitely, definitely a lot of things that I still don't quite have right, but I'm still working on them. And I think that's the beauty of, you know, bodybuilding, coaching, any sport that requires high levels of discipline. It's like, yes, you make mistakes. Yes, you're not where you want to be yet, but you're definitely on your way to be the person that you want to be. And you're doing everything that you can to get there.
That's it. There's a number of different interesting points in there. In relation to, like you, I'm a bit old school. I really give a shit about our clients. And not even just our clients, like all of our partners, every single agency or partner that supports TMP, I really give a shit. And if they don't operate on our 3 team values, which is number 1, be water, we adapt, we create, and in bold letters, we deliver. Number 2, be honor, we always do the right thing. And number 3, be love. There's another human being on the other end of the line. And if anyone in our network doesn't fall into that, we've had to learn to be a little bit more ruthless insofar as, look, you don't subscribe to those values, we're out. You haven't been upfront and honest and transparent, we're out. Yeah. I don't sense you give a shit about the human beings on the other end of the line, we're out. Or sadly, you don't deliver. So, but if they don't deliver and they have honor and they have love, and it's just that they've dropped the ball, we can respect that because they can come back. But if it's a case of all of that, so when it comes to coaching and you have that same level of care, it can be hard. And when you invest a lot of time and energy into someone, it's difficult. The frame that I have, that I use, that helps me work through that is, you're only there for a chapter of their life, you're not there for the whole book. And once I really internalized that, it kind of helps me realize, yeah, you know what, that's it. And I learned this with a CRO, a chief revenue officer in London. And he said to me, look, Kyran, I can sense you're not happy. You can sense you're not happy. So if you want to go, now's your chance to go. And I'd been successful in every sales role I'd been in. There's only one that I wasn't, and that was one of the ones that I wasn't. And he said, look, if you leave, all I want is in 10 to 20 years from now, I want you to have a small twinkle of your eye and go, everybody at that company was great. Everyone, they really treated me well. And I really internalized that. So everybody that encounters TMP, I want them to have a little twinkle in their eye of, you know what, they were good humans. They really looked after me. So for me, I found it really hard when a client would graduate, but actually now I've always asked myself the questions. Number 1, have they just got what they came for and they've graduated? And if the answer is yes, then fucking result. And I'm happy with that. Sure, I can see they have a load more to go. I can see that. But in their mind, in their model of the world, they got what they came for. And that's a graduation moment. We fucking celebrate. Yeah. If they haven't graduated, then I ask, well, were they even coachable? Because some clients aren't coachable. And if the answer is no, that's not really on me. That's probably going to do me a favor. And finally, is it just financial? Is it just they lost their job? Is it just they're struggling for a little bit? And if it is, typically I tend to support them. If they're a client that's been with us for a while and they're a good client, then we'll always support them. We'll be like, right, well, let's just keep the coaching going and maybe slow things down for a month or 2, and then we'll reassess. And if it's still financially not in a good place, let's leave it. And only then, if you answer all those questions and they didn't graduate and they did, and they were coachable and it wasn't financial, then it's on us. At that point, it's like, right, I've dropped the ball somewhere, the team's dropped the ball somewhere. What's that about? Why hasn't that happened? So I think that's a really interesting point that you raised, that because so many coaches bring that to us and they say, I always find that tricky and find that difficult.
Do you know what? It's a great point, because for me, it never really hurts when that relationship with a client ends, when they're not meeting the standards that I set. If they're not meeting the standards that I set, that's absolutely fucking okay. There's a lot of other coaches that will suit you better. What hurts the most is when you know that you've given yourself 100% and they haven't reciprocated that. I think that's what hurts a little bit more, because you probably know deep down that they're capable of doing better, but they're just not willing to accept the help as well. I think that's always been a point, because I've worked with a lot of people where I've got them from point A, where it was a terrible point, to point Z, where they're fucking thriving. And I know a lot of people are capable of that, because I was that person myself many, many times, where, you know, I've been at a very low point, and I've managed to definitely get myself into a place where, you know, I'm over the top. So it's definitely a good one. I think bodybuilding obviously doesn't help with a lot of emotions that are always elevated across most bodybuilders. That definitely doesn't help, because if you've already got someone that's an emotional person, it definitely doesn't help. Then on the other hand, you've got a lot of bodybuilders that have got a lot of underlying issues, like, you know, a lot have eating disorders, etc. And not many are willing to speak about that as well. So when it comes to a coaching process, a lot of coaches overlook a lot of these aspects of the game, because you're not just coaching an athlete, you're coaching a person that probably has endless of struggles that you don't even know about, that you're coming across. So it's definitely a hard one. It's definitely a very, very hard one, where, you know, coaching it's a great tool to have, but at the same time, you have to be careful with the tools you use and how you use them with certain individuals.
Yeah, 100%. We have a belief here at TMP that every single human being at any given moment of their life is doing the best with what they have, right? So if you get a client that you set a standard and they can't reach it, that's their best.
Yeah.
And your job is to challenge them and ask them, is that their best? And then once they say, no, it's not my best, well, are you going to do anything about it? If they then say, no, that actually is their best. So this is where we kind of catch ourselves into thinking pretzels. But we have a belief that every client is doing the best of what they have. And then when you hold up a mirror and you offer them the opportunity to go, well, based on this behavior, this thought, this feeling, is that really your best? And if they say no, but then they don't behave or they don't change, that is their best. And at that point, you've maxed out what you can do. And you can use all the toolboxes in the world, but if somebody's not ready, or if somebody just doesn't have it, just like you remember Bugsy Malone, that song, So You Want to Be a Boxer, so you might as well quit if you haven't got it. It's kind of a little bit like that, you know, and that's how we see.
You've got to want it. You've got to want it 100%. Whatever it is you do, you've got to want it. I think nobody else is going to do that for you. Your coach isn't going to make you want it. You know, you're not going to change your kind of your outlook mentally. You can't drive yourself to that place either. I don't think. Like, no matter how hard you try, you need to have that want inside you already. You need to have that seed established. If that seed isn't there, I don't think it can be. I don't think it can be established, can it?
When I was boxing, I used to beat kids that were 10 times better than me because I wanted it more.
Yeah.
I remember I had at one point, so I actually lost my first fight and it was an outright robbery. Even the other kids, I was crying my eyes out. I think I was 12, 13. The other kid's dad come over and said, no, you won that. I'm really sorry. And that was a really traumatic moment for me. You know, I was heartbroken. But after that, I learned I can't take it to the judges because otherwise they might steal it from me. So it was my ambition to stop every single opponent because I was so upset. So I ended up stopping my next 4 opponents in a row. I was never a big power puncher. I wasn't a knockout merchant. I don't have that in my locker. What I did have in my locker was I would overwhelm you with so many punches you couldn't throw anything back. So the ref's got no choice but to stop it, and I'd break your soul. And I think when you want it bad enough, and this is the problem with a lot of coaches, is they don't want it bad enough. They think they want it bad enough, but they don't, and they kid themselves. So then what happens is you kind of half in, you're half out. If you want something bad enough, I think I was like my 6th fight. By that point, I had 6 fights, won 5, stopped 4. And I boxed a kid who is Jack Halls from Cambridge, and he'd had, I think, and you know, for a 12-year-old, it's a lot of fights. He'd had like 39 fights by that point. I had 6.
Okay, no, that's a lot. He must be boxing like every week.
Yeah. So by that point, when that fight got matched, everybody was fascinated by it, and I just obliterated. I didn't stop him, but I just absolutely obliterated him. And he was so much better than me. He was so actually, when I watched his fights back, he was so much better. But I just wanted it more. And by halfway through round 2, he checked out. You can literally see when you watch the video back, he'd just given up. He didn't want it. And I was putting my whole self-worth on this one fight, right? So when you've got that, you want it that much, you will push through, but you've got to want it. Otherwise, you go find something else, you know?
Effort wins, man. Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. A little bit of hard work can always beat a lot of talent, 100%. But then when you've got talent combined with hard work, that's when the magic happens.
That's it. So I got one final question for you, Matt. I've deeply enjoyed this conversation, and if I'm ever back in your neck of the woods, we'll have to shoot another one perhaps one day. Forget us as an organization, forget us as a team, but what does the phrase total mental performance mean to you? If you had total mental performance, how would you know?
I'm in total control of the process, where mentally I'm bulletproof and mentally I can overcome any challenge that's thrown at me. That's like total mental performance, because I think total mental performance is definitely required when it comes to physical performance. Obviously, where your mind goes, your body will follow, my favorite saying of all time. I definitely think it's more about having a very bulletproof mindset, where no matter what happens, you can find a way, and you can find a way to overcome and be better. So that's total mental. That is what total mental performance is for me. It's having that ability to overcome and be able to overcome any adversity, find a way to progress and keep moving forward.
That falls completely in line with our first team value, which I spoke about, which is be water. And that actually comes from the Bruce Lee. You'll know the Bruce Lee phrase.
Of course,
be
mate,
water.
of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And if you don't know that, you need to switch this up. You need to watch Bruce Lee films now.
Yeah. That's it. You put it into a bottle, it becomes a bottle. You put it into a cup, it becomes a cup. Put it into a teapot, it becomes a teapot. It can float or it can crash. Be water. And that's really what we train all of our clients to be, is water.
Be water, my friend. Be water.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah,
mate, I've deeply enjoyed this conversation, mate. Where can everyone find you?
Instagram's probably the easiest. Instagram, YouTube, I think they're the right places. I don't have TikTok. I don't have Twitter. There's only so much social media time I have to a day. I've actually got like a little timer limit on my Instagram, so there's only so much. So I do apologize. It's only Instagram and YouTube at the moment. That's all my mental performance can hack when it comes to social media time. So that's pretty much the main places. It's mainly Instagram, really. That's where I'm probably most active. YouTube twice a week. So you still get plenty of content there. So that's the places.
Awesome. We'll put the links into the description, mate. But team, if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it to your story, give us a tag, and we'll share it up. We're trying to get this message out to the world that you can achieve total mental performance. You can be water. You can have all of the struggles in the world, and yet you can still perform. It doesn't have to cripple you. It doesn't have to stop you. You can keep moving forward. Kuba, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I appreciate all the great content as well. The content you're putting out is definitely fantastic. So yeah, definitely appreciate you, and massive apologies as well, because we had to reschedule this a couple of times down to my mess ups. So I do apologize, and hopefully we'll get another one in, and we can get stuck into some deeper stuff. So yeah, thank you so much, buddy, and take care.